Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 556, written by jennipuff, a culinary armament, dematerialized. I accidentally dropped my favorite knife. I dropped it into a box I use for light repairs. It's a regular box, a reused Amazon box, 9-inch deep, and I watched it sink down into my stuff, so I stuck my hand in the box trying to reach after it, barely grazing it with my fingers. But it kept sinking further and further, and then finally I felt the bottom of the cardboard box. I took the box and poured out all the contents, looking for my knife. I looked all over and opened everything up, and I couldn't find it at all. So then I looked all around the box. I moved furniture around. I even poured the box out again a second time, but there wasn't anything there. Every now and then, I pour out everything from that box and try looking for it again, but it never turns up, and it sucks so much because I saw it, I felt it. Then suddenly, I didn't anymore. I feel like it just poofed from existence. Ugh, it was my favorite knife too. I can't get it again because it was from a Fry's Black Friday sale, and Fry's doesn't exist anymore. Anyway, I wish I could tell my parents, but they'll just say I lost it because I sometimes misplace things, but this wasn't that. Case notes, file number 556. So another DOP, disappearing object phenomena. Can't get enough of these glitches because they match with my own. The good news for you, there's a decent chance your object will return. Mine haven't, but hey, mine were just tennis balls, so I'm not too shaken up about that. I hope your beautiful knife does come back. That is, unless the mechanical elves on the other side dimension decide, hey, this is a great knife, I think I'll keep it. I mean, they must need to cook too, right? What kind of dishes do extra-dimensional entities eat? Nothing too appetizing, I'm sure. Although I'm not a very adventurous eater, I stick with what I know, mostly Subway. And pizza. Although, never told anyone this, I get pizza without cheese. I'm a heretic. Bonus file, written by Apart Cardiologist 54, the ghost car on our lawn. This has happened several times at this point. It started about 16 months ago when I was cleaning my house around 12 a.m. My husband, boyfriend at the time, worked nights, so I had adjusted to his schedule. I usually kept the blinds open during the day and would go around closing them at night, while I tidied up before bed. Our room was my last stop on the first night this happened. The curtains and blinds were open as I was sweeping the floor when I felt the sensation of being watched. I looked around me when my eyes focused on the silver sedan parked outside my house, mostly in the grass on my front lawn. Now for context, my bedroom window is about 15 yards from the road in front of my house. It's a small front yard in a pretty decently populated neighborhood. Anyway, I saw the car before I saw her or him. I'm not sure, but there was clearly someone sitting in the driver's seat of the car and another person standing about 5 yards from my window, clearly staring at me. The only reason I could see this is because the moon was fairly bright tonight. I shrieked and dropped to the floor and crawled to the light switch to turn it off so I couldn't be seen. I called my husband to ask him what I should do, and he told me to call the cops. Duh. I did, and of course, by the time they got there, the car was gone. They asked if they could see my security footage, and I agreed. But the footage from that section of time was just gone. It skipped over the few minutes that they would have been outside. This has happened several times since then, and I've completely given up on calling the police as I feel they'll think I'm crazy. I have no proof that this is happening, but I would like to have some opinions as to what they may be doing. In the past 16 months, it's happened probably 10 times. Sometimes the person is standing in the yard, and sometimes they aren't. Also, the car has been different every single time, but the light is always on inside the cabin of the vehicle when I go to look. The people inside are never looking where I can see their faces. I'll run to grab my phone to call someone, but they will already be gone. I went into our guest bathroom, which is the only one downstairs besides the one in our master bedroom. It's located in a corner hallway next to the 2 spare rooms in the house, currently his office and our son's room. I went inside and quickly did my business. I don't like being alone, for obvious reasons I feel, and started to wash my hands. The sink is right next to the door. While I was drying my hands, I heard and saw the shadow under the door. Someone run up to the door, stop, turn around, and run into one of the adjacent rooms. I figured it was my husband ready to start the game again and ripped open the door. I fully searched each one of the rooms and didn't find anyone, which I should have if it was him. There was no time for him to run by the time whatever was moved from the door and I opened it, and I clearly saw the shadow go right towards the rooms and not left towards the living room. The second thing that happened was while my husband and I were playing pool, which is right next to our front door. Right after we broke, we heard a loud knock at the front door. We looked at each other, obviously confused as it was pretty late at night. We both went to the door and answered it. There was no one there, and we both stepped out onto the porch to take a look around. We stayed out there for about 30 seconds or so to take a look around and headed back in when we saw nothing. We were both shocked to see that the pool balls were in a straight line down the center of the pool table. It was very shocking since, as I mentioned, we had just broken and the pool balls were scattered when we exited. The third and most recent thing that has happened was when I was alone in the house. Shocker. I was sweeping the steps and some of the plaster-like stuff on the ceiling had started to flake off and make a huge mess. I was cleaning up the landing at the top of the steps when I started mouthing off at the energy that I felt around me. I felt unwelcome in my own home, and that pissed me off. I know I shouldn't have said the things I did, but I was pissed as it's my house. I don't write what I said here, as I still live in this home and don't want to put those words back into existence, and you'll see why. There are 3 rooms up the stairs, and all 3 doors were closed during this time. Once I started getting really belligerent, all 3 doors started to shake violently in the door frames. It was as if there was someone behind each of them just shaking and banging them against the frames. I immediately started having a panic attack and sank to the floor. I screamed out for whatever it was to stop and that I was sorry, and surprisingly, it did. I bolted down the stairs to find my phone and call my husband. As I was about halfway down, I felt a hard and violent shove on the center of my back that almost caused me to tumble down the remainder of the steps. My husband has never felt threatened in our home, but I constantly feel it, even before I made all those comments. And this all happened before the car started showing up, and they were all several months apart. Case file number 557, written by 333 Visions. An entity in my living room. This happened over 10 years ago when I was about 17 or 18 years old. My older brother and I were both living with our parents at the time, and it was only 4 of us that lived in the house. I came home a little late one night and was greeted by a locked front door. I had no house key to get in, and I didn't want to wake my parents up as they'd be irritated to say the least. So I decided to walk around back to see if the back doors happened to be unlocked. Our house was a L-shaped home with 1 window in the living room on what would be the bottom of the L, and double doors around back that led into the living room. As I went along the side of the house, bottom of the L, I noticed the living room light was on, and I looked through the window to see if anyone was in there. It was my brother. The back of his head was facing towards me. He was sitting in his usual position watching TV, kind of half sitting, half laying down on the couch. I thought, sweet, I'll just walk around to the back and knock on the doors to let me in. As I got to the back of the house, where the doors were, I was met with no TV or lights on in the living room. I thought it was kind of odd, but maybe he shut everything off and went to bed in that 5-second span of me walking around back. That would be fast. So I pulled out my phone and called him, which he answered, and I asked if he could let me in. He said, "I'm not home, I'm at the bar right now." My heart sank into my stomach and I got goosebumps to the core. I told him I just saw him in the living room through the window. We both got freaked out and I ended up waiting for him to get home before going inside. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. We still talk about it quite often and we simply have no explanation for what happened that night. If you're wondering, could it not have been my dad? They have a different hair color, brown and blonde, respectively, and completely different builds, and I was not under the influence of any substance to mistake them.